looking to join in, if you can monitor that. So good morning, everybody. My name is Dan LaPrade. I'm the training coordinator for Mass Waterworks Association. I want to welcome all of you for taking this training session. We've got a big group this morning, and the annual statistic report is kind of like death, taxes, and public water systems version of having to do paperwork every year. And I'm quite familiar with it. I worked at DEP for 24 years prior to being training coordinator for Mass Waterworks, so I'm very familiar with, the anxiety that completing the annual statistic report creates, and I'm very glad that we have the group of speakers we have this morning that are going to share their experience and knowledge on filling out the annual statistic report. All of the folks that are in this session have been doing it for many years, so they're very familiar with some of the issues that people encounter and some important tips to make the process as easy as possible. So before we get into the training session and I introduce our speakers, for those of you who are not familiar with Zoom, although at this point you've probably used something like Teams or Google Meet or Zoom, but in Zoom, which is what we're using this morning, there are some important tools on your toolbar that you should be familiar with. And the first one on your Zoom screen in the bottom toolbar, which if you hover your mouse over the bottom toolbar, you'll see a little microphone. We'll ask folks to have their microphone turned off so that we don't hear any background sound. Like I said, a big group this morning, so we don't want to hear phones ringing and doors opening and closing and that sort of thing. So you should have a little red crosshatch through your microphone, and that means it's turned off. The next icon on your toolbar is the little camera icon, and that allows us to see each other, and we ask that folks have their camera turned on so that we can verify attendance, just like if we were doing this real time in person in a classroom. We would want to know that the people that are signed up for it are actually in the classroom. So please make sure you have your camera turned on by clicking on that little camera icon. If you click on the participants button, you will see a list of the people that are also joined in. The chat button is the next one that we'll use a few times through this training this morning. It's the way that you sign in, and because the session is recorded, we can go back and print out a copy of the report of who signed in. So if you haven't done so already, please click on that chat button. It'll open up a little box that you can simply type a message into, and I'd like you to type your first and last name. If you have other people from the same utility, you might want to indicate by typing in your utility's name as well, and we can go back and check on that. We're also going to use chat for people to ask questions, because as we go through the training this morning, there may be some questions that you may want to ask one or more of the presenters. You can type that message into chat, and then I'll keep track of that. Emily, who I should have mentioned, is also kind of behind the scenes. There's Emily. I should just turn the camera on. She's our administrative assistant, and she's doing a lot of the help in the background to make sure people are logged in, keep track of attendance, and then put some messages into chat as we go through the morning. So if you have questions for our presenters, type them into chat. I'll jot them down, and I will feed them to our presenters when we have time for questions or during break. You should be seeing the my presentation full size on your computer. You don't want to be seeing it as one little tiny box amongst the other 50 tiny boxes of the people that are in class. So you have to be in what's called speaker view. If you go to the top right of your Zoom screen, you'll be able to see a little option to change from speaker view or gallery view. Gallery view is when you see everybody's little box on your screen, but you want to be seeing the presentation full size. So you want to be in speaker view. As I mentioned, the training sessions being recorded. We can verify student participation and attendance this way. And if you have any questions, please jot down. If you have any technical issues, you might want to jot down my cell phone number. That's kind of the backup plan. If something goes wrong from your end and you need to get a hold of me, you lost the connection, your camera doesn't work, you can't hear me, anything like that, please send me a text message, and that way I know what's going on your end. A little bit about Mass Waterworks Association. We're a member organization. Primarily, our focus is to provide training opportunities for utilities and those in the waterworks industry. That's kind of my job, is to offer as many training opportunities out there, not only for people getting ready to take a state exam, but also for people who need to get training hours to be able to renew their license. And I'll show you a slide of some of the trainings we have coming up. The other focus of the association is to provide advocacy to all those in the water industry. And if you're a member of the association, you know that Jen Peterson, our executive director, does a great job of keeping everybody out there informed about what's happening on a statewide level, regulatory wise, policy wise, for water systems, sampling issues, water operator issues. She does a great job. She has a seat at the table of all of those different committees and agencies, and keeps everybody up to date on what's going on. These are some of the benefits of being a member of the association. So I encourage you to check out our website, become a member if you're not already, and you'll get some trainings at lower cost. We have a lot of different committees, and they're listed up here in the blue box. If you're interested in learning more about any of those committees or want to join them, you can send Jen an email. Her email address is up there on the screen. You can also get it on our website. These are the trainings that we have coming up. We've got some others kind of in the works that we'll be posting on our website and announcing in the next few weeks. But if you have any interest in learning about what these trainings are or signing up for them, you can go to our website and you can participate in any of those trainings. A few ground rules for how we're going to do the training this morning. For those of you who have attended some of this, is our first training in 2023, similar to how we've done our remote trainings the last couple of years. You have to sign in and out using chat, which I just talked about. Oops, sorry about that. You need to have your camera turned on throughout the training. That's just to make sure that we know you are actually in the training and participating. We'll be launching a poll partway through. It's kind of an interactive tool that Zoom has. Get an idea of who's in the class. I'll explain that a little bit when we get to the time to do the poll. At the very end, we're going to do some assessment questions. Those will be done using SurveyMonkey. We'll provide you with the link to do that. Also the QR code if you want to do the assessment questions on your smartphone. And then the final item would be the course evaluations, which will be done in a similar fashion. You'll get the link in chat to do that. Also have a QR code that I'll show if you want to use your smartphone. And then the training contact hour certificates. This class is 2 training contact hours. And we will mail those to the address that was provided to us at the time of registration. This is kind of a rough outline of how the morning is going to go. Slightly different than what was shown in the flyer. The topics covered are what we want to cover, but we just got a little bit better kind of scheduling on it. We are going to break somewhere's around 10 o'clock. Depends on how the presentations are going, but we will have a break mid-morning, and then we'll try to wrap things up a little after 11. Does anybody have any questions for me? If you want to, you can unmute yourself and ask a question. These are our presenters for the training this morning, and I want to again thank all of them for taking the time to not only prepare their PowerPoint slides, but also do the presentation this morning. As I mentioned, all 4 of them very familiar with many of the aspects of the annual statistic report. So with that, I am going to pass this off to Andrew Durham. So I will stop my screen share, and DEP can open up their slide deck.
Can you see that, everyone?
Yep, that looks good, Andrew. Thank you.
All right, good morning. Thank you for attending this tips for completing the 2022 annual statistical report. I'm going to thank Mass Waterworks and all of you for attending. My name is Andrew Durham. I've worked at the DEP for 28 years. I've worked in the regional office. I've also worked in multiple programs in the Boston office, as well as developing the ASR 14 years ago. This is our 14th year. Oops, sorry, I jumped too far ahead. Today's topics, Dan had already gone over some of these, but we will go over the EDEP account setup, which includes the proofing form. We will jump into the annual statistical report. I think Theo will take this piece. We will go over some of the common problems that are identified with the certified operators and contact information, the staffing form. I will continue with the cross connection section, and Jen Durso of the Water Management Act program will go through the Water Management Act forms and the common errors and problems that she sees there. We will have opportunities for questions, and we are willing to address any questions about the ASR, even if they're not covered today. Please type them into the chat and we will get to them later. So we will address your questions. So we're going to jump right into how you get an EDEP account. So in order to fill out the ASR, you'll need an EDEP account. Associated with that account, or the extra security needed to access the ASRs, you will need to get a proof. We'll address that too. So to apply for an account, you would go to the EDEP login page, which the URL is here. You can also just Google MassDEP, and it'll bring you right to the login page. On the login page, you have the opportunity to enter a username and password and log in, or down below, you will see on the right, there's a new user button. You use that to set up a new account. So you also have the opportunities to reset your password if you've lost your password, or get login help for, if you forget your username or other login problems. So the user registration is pretty standard to other, online user registrations. It's going to ask you for some information, such as your name, email address, contact address, phone number. The fields highlighted with the red asterisks are required fields. And I must stress that, the email address that is used here is very important for a lot of purposes in EDEP. Number one, it's got to be a valid email address to be able to register because you have to reply to your email. It's also used during the ASR submittal process. That's how you get your receipts. It's also a way that we use those emails for announcing ASR and other important information from the drinking water program. So I highly recommend that you update your email address and make sure it's active in the future too. So everyone should check their email address on their accounts. On the right-hand side, it shows you the next step, which would be creating a username, a nickname, and a password. The nickname is EDEP sort of specific tool, and the nickname is what is used for sharing transactions on EDEP. So if you want to share your transaction or you want someone to share a transaction with you, you need to provide them with your nickname so then they will be able to shoot that transaction over to your account and you can work on it. This is important for the cross connection section. When you have a third party or a contract cross connection firm working for you, you need to collect their nickname so you can share it with them so they can fill out that form. The second step is the terms and conditions. You need to read through the terms and conditions and accept them. Fairly standard. The email activation is the third step. So an email is sent from MassDEP to that email that you provided, and you need to click on the link to confirm that this email is active and that it's you. And here's a common problem that happens, especially with this email, is that your browser will open up a second tab, a new window, and EDEP does not allow for multiple tabs or windows to be open in one session. The reason for this is that we had operators filling out multiple ASRs at once, and data was getting scrambled between the two, and it created a lot of corruption problems. So what you need to do is to actually close out your browser, close out Chrome, Firefox, Microsoft Edge, whatever you're using. The tips down here are, close out by using an X. You're on a Mac, use the Command Q to close all the browsers. You got to make sure all the browsers, not just EDEP browsers, are closed. Everything else you have open, and then restart the browser to get back on if you get this message up above, which is sorry, EDEP cannot be used with multiple browsers. And step 4, the last step of registering for your user account, is the security questions. We added this on, and it's a requirement that when you make changes or when you are submitting your ASR or transaction, you need to answer a security question in the appropriate manner. So there are a number of questions. The system prompts you to pick 5 of them and write a response. The answers are not case sensitive, but they are smart enough to recognize if you try to use the same response to all the questions or to multiple questions, it will not allow you. So they must be unique responses to each question. So we recommend you store the answers to security questions in a safe place, because if the last time you answered one of these was last year, it's unlikely you'll remember it. I wouldn't. So have them written down and stored in a safe place where only you know what they are. You will not be able to submit the ASR unless you can answer the security question. It's a single question. It's randomly picked one of the 5. You don't have to answer all 5 questions, but you have to answer one of them. Avoid using spaces, mixed upper and lower case in your answers. One-word answers are best. Keep it simple. if you forgot the answers to your security questions, it requires EEAIT. That's our IT department. The drinking water staff cannot help you, and we're going to shoot you over to the EEA people. And the problem with that is that the response time varies. It's a help desk. It's an IT help desk, and they're helping out a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons. So it creates a ticket, and the ticket gets addressed in line. So that's why we recommend writing these down, keeping them in a safe place so you can reference them in the future. Applying for a proof. The proof is extra security applied to your EDEP account that allows you access to the ASR and allows you to sign and submit the ASR. You can actually share a transaction after it's been created. You can share it with a person that does not have a proof. They will be allowed to edit the ASR, but a person without a proofed EDEP account cannot sign and submit the ASR. So if you need to open and submit an ASR, you will need a proof. There's two different proofs that allow you access to the ASR. One is the PWS owner or responsible person proof. It's kind of a general public water supply proof. And the second is a certified operator proof. Now we'll go into how you apply for the proof. So when you're on your EDEP homepage, you can open up the forms for drinking water. And the first of the forms for the drinking water, there are three options, is the annual statistical report. The second is the water quality monitoring reports. That is the upload for the certified laboratories doing your water quality analysis. That's where they upload your water quality data. And the third is a well driller for the well drillers program. So you see on the right-hand side, the Public Water System Annual Statistical Report, the blue button that says proof. That indicates that you do not have a proof and you need to apply for one. You can start the application process by clicking on the proof button. After you have applied for the proof, but it has not been approved, you may see a pending button there. So if you have a pending button, you need to contact either Tio or myself, and we will help you finish that off. Once you have the approved proof, you will see the button that you, on the left-hand side that says Start Transaction. That allows you to start a new ASR. Also, to get to the proof area, you can go under the My Profile tab at the top of the home page, and there's a Proof of Identity section. And this opens up the proof page that allows you to apply for a proof. There are multiple proofs for different DEP programs here. So the way to start the process is to check the first box on the right-hand side, apply for proof. Below that, there's a pull-down list. On that list, you will see the PWS owner or responsible person option or the PWS certified operator option. Then you are forced to click the administrative privileges option, and then it asks you for a TIN and a business name. A TIN, unfortunately, it was not defined on this page, but a TIN is the tax identification number. Now, we don't use this TIN feature for the drinking water program, but it is a EDEP-wide function. The TIN is used to share transactions automatically between accounts at a large company. You know, let's say GE in Lynn. If all the users put in the same TIN, they all get to see each other's work. It makes it easier so they don't have to share those transactions. We do not employ that feature on EDP. The problem is if you put a tin in for a community and the Conservation Commission also puts in that same tin, you will see Conservation Commission notices of intent, and they will see your ASR on their accounts. To avoid this, you can put in a very random set of numbers and letters. I believe it asks you for a 9-character entry. But if you mix up numbers and letters very randomly, you can avoid seeing other people's work, and you can avoid having people see your work. Once you've put in the proof type, the TIN, and the business name, click on apply, and it'll open up the next page, which allows you to associate a public water supply ID. These are the two proof types. Typical use of them is like owner, superintendent, or someone else working in a legally responsible role at the water supply can apply for the owner responsible person. The certified operator proof is limited to people with a certified operator license. We do check your name and license in the DOL website before approving those. The application for the proof, after you click that apply button, it brings you to this page. This page allows you to enter, number one, your certified operator license number if you're applying for that proof. It allows you to enter the PWS ID or multiple PWS IDs. If you are a contract operator, you may be operating multiple public water supplies. You can enter in multiples here. How it's done is you enter the number in up top where it says enter PWS ID, and you click the add PWS ID button down below. And then you would repeat that process until you've added all the PWS IDs that you want. If you want to remove a PWS ID, let's say you're a contract operator and you lose a client and you don't want to do their work anymore, you need to come in here, update your proof, and you would click on the PWS ID down below and click on the delete PWS ID. That removes the PWS ID affiliation with your account, and it'll remove any of the associated transactions. Now, I'm going to put a little plug in here. In January 2023, DEP has required certified laboratories to report their water quality data on EDEP. When a lab reports, let's say bacteria, VOCs, PFAS, or something for you on your behalf, it will automatically show up on your account or any account that has that PWS ID associated in a proof. So if a lab does some bacteria reports for you, it uploads it, they automatically show up on your account once they sign and submit that data. It shows up on your account when they upload it, before they sign and submit it. It could give you an opportunity to review it before they sign and submit it, and it moves into DEP. So it's kind of like if they sent you a paper copy of the water quality report to review before they sent it to DEP. It allows you that feature. So the PWS IDs entered here are used for two purposes. And then the final step in proofing is the proof form. This is a form that you're required to get notarized and mail into DEP. The reason for this is that there's federal regulations on electronic reporting of drinking water data that's used for compliance. So this is an EPA mandate that we collect these and store these signed notarized forms. So it's very important that you sign it and you mail it in to not the address that's on this form right now, because we have moved as of December, But even if you do mail it to that address, it will be forwarded for many months to come. But this form is being updated, so when you print it, you will have the mailing address, the number 3 up above that's appropriate. On the left-hand side, you can see our new address. And that's that. So yes, there's one screenshot missing here. There is the pending button. So you can either see the proof when you don't have a proof on your account. After you have applied for the proof, you will see a pending button. And that's before it has been approved by the drinking water program. Either we have not received the form or you never mailed the form, and it will lock you out of the ASR. Once you have the approved proof, you will see the Start Transaction button. And the Start Transaction button allows you to start the ASR for that year. Forgot password. If you forgot your password, you can use the forgot password reset password link on the right-hand side. It does require you to answer a security question. The get login help is for when you forgot your security questions or your username. So when you click the forgot password link, it will send you an email. Once again, the email is very important to be active and you have access to it. And here you can reset your password. If you forgot your username, it sends you to the EDEP support login information. It gives you a bunch of options here. Forgot password and security questions, forgot security questions, forgot security questions, update security questions. Account gets locked. If you try too many times, your account is locked. Your primary email is not accessible at that time. You forgot username. This sends a ticket in to the help desk, and they will hear back. They will address your issues, but if you do not hear back from them within 2 or 3 days, please contact us and we will try to push it forward with our contacts at EEAIT. Any questions on EDEP accounts and proofing and how to get started?
Folks can also type their question into chat if they want. What I'm going to do now is launch a poll. There's 3 questions. We'll give everybody a few minutes. You should be able to complete the poll on your computer device. If you run into any problems not being able to do the poll or it doesn't seem to be advancing through the questions, just type a message into chat, because the participation in the poll is something that we look at when we want to confirm attendance and participation. So I'll give everybody a few minutes to go through and answer the questions in the poll, and then I will share those poll results with everybody. And I think if the presenters are trying to do the poll, I don't think it allows you as a co-host to do the poll. So Andrew and Jen and Andy and Tio, I'm not sure if you'll have the ability to do the poll, but you'll certainly be able to see the results.
Hey Dan, the poll just disappeared off the screen, I think, for all of us before we can finish it.
I still see it showing on mine.
Dan, it might have been me. I X'd out of my poll and it seems like everyone else lost theirs. So
All right, let me
maybe.
let me redo it.
I won't touch it.
Leave it alone. All right, so I relaunched it. It looks like it's up there. No, Dave, there's no right or wrong answer. Everybody gets 100. It's a poll. So we'll give everybody a few minutes to do it. Looks like it's working okay. Again, if you're having a problem advancing through the questions or it doesn't seem to be working, just type me a message into chat. And again, if you have any general questions for the presenters as they go through it, you can type it into chat and then I'll feed those questions to the presenters.
I see one from Danielle. It looks like she direct messages me, but want me to address it now, Dan?
Yep.
Yeah, Danielle asked the question, how long does it take the proof process to generally take once the form arrives at DEP? Good question, Danielle, because I did miss one point. Since we've gone, a lot of remote these days, we recommend people both scan the notarized form and email it to us, as well as we do need that hard copy to meet EPA's requirements. So if you scan it and email it in, it will be approved within a day. Once you mail it in and it goes through the mail process and we get sorted out at the DEP office, we are only going in the office 1 or 2 days a week at this times. So it'll probably get picked up within a week, but if you email it to us, it'll take a day or two at the most.
So you're not, the approval of that proof is not waiting for the hard copy, it sounds like, once the.
Well, what happens is, yeah, once I get the scanned copies, I do look out for the hard copy, and I can always remove your proof if we never get the hard copy. But so far, everyone's been very trusting and very diligent about getting me the hard copies. So it's a process that works well.
Good, thank you. So I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So you should see, first question was basically, who do we have in the training session this morning? As I suspected, majority of the folks are in a management or supervisor role, and we have some operators also in here and a few of the administrative folks. And then I'll try to get a sense for how big are the systems that are represented in the training. And looks like the majority of them are in that 10,000 to 50,000 population served. And then the last question is to get an idea of folks' familiarity with doing the annual statistic report, and pretty even breakdown of people who have been doing it for years and probably are joining the training just to hear about any new updates or tricks, tips to doing it. And then we've got people who are kind of peripherally familiar with it, and probably will be, my guess is that some of those folks are going to be taking over the ASR for somebody that used to do it previously. All right, so with that, you can X out that poll that's showing up on your computer screen, and we can, I'll pass the baton back off to DEP to continue on.
All right, so the next section, we're going to address the ASR, and Tio Yano, I believe, is going to step in and take over the presentation.
Andrew, did you want to go over like submitting and printing and whatnot?
I'll let you go over it, Tio.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
All right.
I don't have the slides ready.
Okay, I can go through, whoops. Keep doing that, clicking on this. So here we go with starting an ASR transaction. So we left off with, once you have the proof and you go into the drinking water forms on the EDEP homepage, you see the Start Transaction button. Once you click the Start Transaction button, you'll see the first screen on the left here. It asks you to select a proof. If you have more than one proof, it'll show them on the pull down list. Otherwise, you pick that proof you have. PWS certified operator is the example. And then it asks you to select the business. You need to select a business. It really has no bearing on whether it does not limit you on the ASRs that you want to start. Once you have a proof, it allows you to start any ASR for any public water system. There are no direct links to those PWS IDs you applied in the proof or anything like that. So it is kind of free form here. So, you know, let's say sometimes we get questions that they don't see, you know, if they have multiple public water supplies that they manage, but they've only entered in one business name, just pick that business name. This is also a feature that's used in other areas of DEP that we do not utilize. And then once you've answered those two questions, you will get the screen presented to you on the right, where you enter the PWS ID for the public water supply that you want to fill out at that time. This again is not limited to anything in your proof or your account. It allows you to pick any PWS ID. Note that the system only allows a single transaction for each PWS ID. So once you have claimed that PWS ID, no one else can open an ASR for that public water system that year. We do get some questions that someone else has opened a ASR for their public water system, and it may be an old certified operator, it may be the owner when you are the certified operator. We can look up who owns that transaction and try to sort that out and get it to the right person. But that's the way it works. So there are limitations here. Down below, you will see the name of the public water supply in the city. And if it matches what you think you are trying to open, you click the next button. So number one problem, someone has already opened that ASR. You will get this message that it's already been started. You can reach out to us. This is an issue that the drinking water program folks can address. So you contact Tio, myself. We are being assisted by Ben and Gufran this year. Again, they helped out last year. Our contact information is right at the end of the presentation today. But those are the 4 people you can contact. And the more people you contact, the more likely you'll get a quick response. The solution is contact the staff at your PWS, you know, or us, and we can tell you who owns it, and we will sort it out. So you start the ASR transaction. So you click on the next button at the bottom after you see the name of the public water system, and it opens up the first page of the ASR transaction, which gives you a link to the owner, legally responsible owner, I believe. I got to check this next page, but when you click next, or you click on the link, Public Water System Annual Statistical Report, it brings you, well, this is sharing transaction, so I'm jumping to advance. So it brings you to the legal person responsible at that public water system. Now we're going to jump to the sharing transaction. Sharing transactions between accounts is fine. It allows you multiple people to work on a single transaction. So, you know, cross connections is definitely a section that people share with a contract or contract cross connection person. Sometimes at a water system treatment plant, people will address the treatment sections and various sections of a report. So Sharing a transaction with other users is fine. We do not recommend sharing your login information with other people because this is like sharing your bank account information. It's bad practice. You do not want to share your EDEP login information. Have them open up EDEP account. They don't need a proof to do edits, and it actually assures you they will not sign and submit anything that you have not approved. You will need their nickname, their EDEP nickname. You take the nickname, you come into the transaction overview page here, and you see the print transaction, delete transaction, and share transaction buttons. Click on the share transaction. It opens up a shared with list, so you can see if you've shared it with anyone else. And when you need to add a new person, you click on the add button. Once again, it shows you the shared with, but it opens up the fields down below, and you type in the person's nickname in the share with field. In this example, Tio is sharing it with me. The roles, you have different roles. If you want them just to see the transaction, pick viewer. If you want them to edit, if you want them to update information in the transaction, you click editor. If you want to give them the ability to sign it, you can make them the signer or signer and editor. You can give them both of those roles. If you give them ownership, you're giving the transaction away, and you will no longer have the ability to share it to anyone else, or you no longer have the ability to work on it. You verify the name. EDEP will show the user name and also the role that you've picked. And once you agree with it, you click the add button. And that shares the transaction with that person. You can go in and you can remove the share with, or you can actually put in a date range that you share with them. So there's multiple ways to control the share. We move on to the printing transactions. So from the transactions list, you would pick a transaction. So this account has multiple ASRs that are opened under it. You click on the Public Water System Annual Statistical Report link, and it will open the transaction overview page. And the first button on the top of the page that you see is the print transaction button. You may see this download to print screen, and it may take a few minutes for the EDEP system to build your PDF report for you. You can return to my EDEP and come back to this transaction, or you can just wait. Once your file, your PDF file has been built, it's collecting all the data and putting it into the PDF. You will see the screen down below. And down below, if you click on the download file, it will open the PDF. Here's an example of the first page of the PDF. It shows the username, transaction, the time that the file was created. You can do this for work in progress. So before you signed and submitted a report, or you can do this after you have submitted and signed a report. The work in progress reports, people like to print them sometimes so they can see the report on paper or share them with other people in an office or at the organization. So Tia has gone ahead and shown you the different screens that you will see with the different common browsers that are out there. If you are using Google Chrome, You do not want to use the download button to print, but you actually use the print icon over on the right-hand side. You'll click that, and if you are hooked up to a printer, it should go to the printer. If you are using Microsoft Edge, you do not want to save this. You want to use the print button. And if you do use the print button, it will allow you to actually print it or save it once the print feature opens. If you're using Firefox, the browser will automatically download the PDF. Attaching files. So once you have filled out the ASR and all the sections have been validated, so you get the green check marks in the transaction overview page, green check marks next to all the sections. You click next, it goes to the attached files. The way you can tell what step you are in the process, you look at the gray bars at the top with the gray arrows. The forms gray arrow has turned into a dark gray. The attached files is still a light gray. So once you move from the forms to the attached files, it'll ask you, do you want to attach files to this transaction? This is typically what you see when you are filling out one of the ASRs for smaller systems. Larger systems, the community systems, usually it prompts you to attach changes to your emergency response plan or other information. It'll prompt you to attach files that are identified within the ASR that was filled out. Both of these are typical of what you would see at this point. In the first example, yes or no, attach files, pretty standard. You will get a screen where it allows you to choose the file, like in the right-hand screen. You will click on choose file, find the file on your system, and then attach that file. And here we have two examples where on the top example, the user has indicated they will send the files by mail. If you look on the right-hand side of the screen, those check boxes, send by mail. And then you'll also have the opportunity to attach more files. The key thing is to click the attach update files button. This saves the choices you have made on the screen. The attach update files button, if you skip this, you use this, you end up getting stuck at this point, and we often get people who are stuck trying to attach files. Down below, you will see attaching additional files. You need to enter this description, choose a file, and click the confirm button. And you also see that the files that have been attached, that you have the ability to view them. There's a view links to open and look at them before you actually move off this page by clicking the next button at the bottom. This is a shared process by all the EDP programs. It's not ideal. It can be difficult and confusing to get through. It does work, but many people get stuck on this. You know, we are willing to help you. Ben, Gufran, Tio, and myself can walk you through it if you have problems. Submitting. So here's the security questions again. You want to make sure you can answer the security questions. And I believe it's only 3 tries, and then it may lock you out. If you get locked out, you can come back at later, or you would have to go to the EEAIT help desk and get them to reset your reset your security questions. You can see on the right hand in the grayed out section, right hand screenshot, that the gray bars, the gray arrows, have gone from the forms, the attached files. They're both in the dark gray. You're now in the signature step. After you've signed, successfully signed and answered your security question, it brings you back to the transaction overview page. And you can see that the gray arrows have moved all the way over to the signature step, and there's only one step left, the submit step, that's in the light gray color. There's a common mistake where people leave it in the signed status and they don't complete the submission. DEP staff can't see this yet. It hasn't moved into our viewable database. So we will consider this an unsubmitted ASR. We can go in and find out which ASRs are sitting there in a signed status, and we will send you an email and say, please go back in. So this requires you to log in, go back to the transaction overview page and finish it up. What you would do is click the next button, and it brings you to the submit step. And the submit step shows you your work that's being done. It's basically a copy of the receipt that will be sent. What you need to do here is click on the orange submit button, and it sends you a confirmation email, which you should keep your receipt that you have submitted your ASR for that year. If there's ever any questions and you can produce this, we can say that we lost it on our end, which I don't know if we've ever had one happen, but it's good to cover yourselves. So we've reached the end of that EDEP ASR section. Are there any questions about how you manage your transaction on EDEP? The sharing, signing, submitting, any of that, attaching files?
Again, people can unmute themselves to ask Andrew the question, or if you feel more comfortable, you can type it into chat. Either way works for us.
I have a question. Can
Go
you
ahead,
hear me?
please.
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
we can hear you.
Okay, just making sure. Just to clarify, so if you share the transaction, like 2 people in one public water supplier can work on the ASR at the same time?
Yes, if they're working on the same section, it can get kind of kludgy because the system doesn't know what to save when. So I don't recommend you trying to work on the same section.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone wants to work on the staffing contact operator section and the other person is working on the water management X section, there's not a problem. But if you're both in the same form, I can't promise you that it's going to come out the way you want.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Curtis?
Yeah.
Yes, so just to clarify, if one of my coworkers is the person that usually does the ASR, if I want to be able to work on it with her, I have to go into EDEP and set up my own account and be proofed first before she's able to share the share it with me? Is that how that works? Am I getting that right?
Well, you will need an EDP account. I don't know, if you plan on signing if you plan on starting or signing the ASR, then you will need a proof. But you can work on the ASR just with an EDP account. So if you open an EDP account and you give her your nickname, your EDP nickname, she can share it with you. You can go in and make edits and work on the ASR, and then she could sign it at the end. She has the proof.
I don't see any questions in chat, Andrew, so if somebody comes up with something after you think of, feel free to type it into chat. We'll have more opportunities for questions and answers.
All right, Andrew, do you want me to take over from here?
Sure, Tia.
Okay.
Good.
So my name is Tio Yano. I've been working with the drinking water program since 2002, and I've been involved in the annual statistical report since about 2010. So I'll just go over what the ASR is and what we're looking for, and some hangups that people get caught up on. So the annual statistical report, it's an annual report that all public water suppliers are required to file. We release it normally in January sometimes we've been late and we've had to push it back until February. But we always give 2 months from the time of release to submit the annual statistical report. Excuse me. And this year we're expecting to release the ASR on January 26th. So I believe that's next Thursday. And it'll be due 2 months from there. So March 31st is the anticipated due date for this year. So on the annual statistical report, what we're looking for is the previous calendar year data. And the data itself is pre-populated into the forms, except for the annual data. The annual data would be things such as water volumes and any sort of staffing changes. The annual statistical report, the data that you give to us, we use that data for Section 70 billing. We use it for reporting to the EPA, and the WMA program uses it for permit compliance purposes. Next slide. Andrew. Oh. I don't have control over the slides. I think Andrew may have left. Right. There we go. Okay, so when you first start the annual statistical report, after you go through starting the transaction, the first form you're going to see is this verification form. We've noticed that people have been kind of skipping through this form because it is pre-populated. But please take the time to review the information. We use this for enforcement purposes, so we need to know who the actual legally responsible party is in case we need to take enforcement actions. Next slide. So on the annual statistical report, you should try to save the form on a regular basis as you're working through it, because the form does go inactive after 20 minutes. So if you're looking around for data that you need to report on the form and you take longer than 20 minutes, that form is going to expire, and the data that you have entered up until that point, it's not going to be saved. When you click on the error check and next buttons, there are two separate buttons. There's an error check button. There's an error check and next button. The forms will automatically save at that point, but you should just get into the habit of clicking that save button on a regular basis. When you exit out of a form, rather than clicking on the X button for the browser window itself, you should click on the exit button, the blue button that's labeled exit, so that it actually ends your session correctly. If you do it this way, you'll avoid that multiple tab error message that Andrew was talking about earlier. Next slide. So when it comes to the annual data, this is the data that for the most part is not pre-populated every year, which includes the water production volumes, which is on the individual sources as well as the combined sources, which would be the water production and consumption form, and then the groundwater, purchased water, and surface water sources forms. The water volume losses that you report every year, that also is not pre-populated. The staffing changes, although we do pre-populate with the staffing data that we currently have for your public water system, we don't have any of the changes that have occurred during the year unless you've reported it to the regions throughout the year. The cross connection form is mostly not pre-populated every year. We need that data every year, which is why we don't populate it for you. The source protection information is also not pre-populated. Again, it's because we need you to provide that data to us every year. And any sort of water treatment changes that have occurred throughout the year are also not pre-populated unless you've gone through the regions and gotten approval. So we need you to report that data as well. A good habit to get into is just to collect all this data ahead of time, whether that's in digital files or paper printouts, because again, you don't want to be inactive in any given session for more than 20 minutes because it will just log you out of the system. And in general, just avoid multiple windows and tabs so that you don't get that error, because it is very annoying to have to close every single window in order to be able to log back into EDP. And if you have other windows open for other purposes, you're going to have to close those as well. Next slide. So some of the data that you report on the ASR, for the most part, the data just flows into our data systems. But some of the data, we can't allow it to flow into our data systems without some sort of review process. And those include if you were to report a new groundwater, surface water, or purchased water source, if you were to report a new treatment plant, or any sort of treatment technique changes. Those all require regional approval. And so I think in the past, you know, there's been instances where water systems report the same changes every single year, and those changes aren't being reflected on the next year's ASR. That's a common complaint. If you do notice that the data that you're reporting isn't being pre-populated the following year, please contact your regional office and let them know that you reported this data on the ASR and that it needs to be reviewed. Some of the data also cannot be updated on the ASR forms. For instance, the status or the availability of a source, a treatment plant, a pump station, a storage facility, the number of lead and copper samples that your public water system is required to take. So if you notice that any of these data are incorrect, again, you'll need to contact your regional office to make those changes. Next slide. And these are the regional contacts. If you need to make any of those changes, please contact these individuals. Next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the staffing and contact information form, which we tend to get a lot of questions about. I think it's a little confusing what needs to be reported and how it needs to be reported. So the staffing and contact information, the certified operator information on that form, the data that we get is we get that data from the Division of Occupational Licensure. So any sort of, if for instance, you have an operator that you can't enter into the form, just make sure that you check their operator license status, because the only operator licenses that we load into the ASR are the currently active licenses. So if your license expired, say last month, then that license number will no longer be available in the ASR to choose it and to populate it into the form. Excuse me. And the primary distribution and the primary treatment operator contact information that we get or that we display on the annual statistical report, which is, I believe, section 4 of the staffing and contact information form. That information, such as the address and the phone number, we get that information directly from the Division of Occupational Licensure. So if that information is incorrect, you need to contact DOL and update your information with DOL. Okay, next slide. So if your license, if your certified operator license has expired, you need to contact DOL to renew your license. If it turns out that renewing your license is going to take some time and you need, this is only for water suppliers with, say, like one certified operator, and you're in a bind and you have to submit the ASR, but you can't because you can't validate the form without a proper licensed certified operator, and the form won't validate, then there is the option to apply for a temporary emergency certification through the Board of Certification of Drinking Water Suppliers. And the link is provided right there. So you can go through that process to get a temporary emergency certification, which you can use on the ASR to submit, to validate, and to submit the ASR. Next slide. So on the staffing and contact information form, what we want to see in the certified operator section is, are all these certified operators that are currently employed by the PWS. And what we want is for you to capture any sort of staffing changes that have occurred during the previous calendar year. So for instance, if an operator no longer worked for the public water system, then what you need to do is to end date that operator on the staffing form. You should only ever delete an operator if that operator has never worked for the public water system. So it's essentially a data entry error. And in those cases, it's okay to delete the operator. If you have a new operator, then you have to enter in the start date, which is the date of hire. And if you have multiple operators at your system and they're switching roles, say from a general operator to a secondary operator, then you need to end date the general operator role and then enter the start date of that secondary operator role. So what we're basically trying to do is capture the staffing changes and the role history of these operators on that form. And any operator listed on the staffing form must be affiliated to at least one role. So you can't have an operator that's listed on that form without a role. That role, it can be end dated because obviously for historical purposes, but every single operator must have at least one role. Next slide. So there are validations which are enforced on that staffing form. Every PWS must obviously have at least one primary distribution operator on the form. So and an operator cannot have overlapping roles. So for instance, let's say John is indicated as being both the primary and the secondary distribution operator during an overlapping time period. That'll cause a validation error on the form because that's not allowed. But John, for instance, can be both the primary distribution operator and the primary treatment operator during that same time period. He just can't be both the primary and the secondary distribution operator during that same period. So there are other validation rules as well, based on the PWS class, the size, and the treatment plant classification. For example, if a PWS has a treatment plant classified greater than D, which is, I believe, disinfection, then a primary treatment operator is required for the public water system. So those types of validations are built into the form. And as you're filling out the form, and once you click on that error check and next button, if there are any sort of validation errors related to those rules, those errors will come up on the form, and you need to correct those errors. Next slide. So to enter a operator on that form, what you want to do is type in their license number into that field next to the add new operator button. What we recommend to do is type in, like, say, the first few digits of their license number, and then what will happen is you'll get this drop down list that includes all the license numbers that have those digits in them. And so from that drop down list, you can go ahead and click on the proper license and then click on add new operator. And then that'll populate the table above, which lists all the operators. Excuse me. Next slide. So one of the issues that people seem to run into often is where they don't necessarily fill out the forms in order. And so they may go to, say, the staffing form prior to filling out and validating the other forms. And the staffing form requires that the system and the system information form, which is the first form in the list of forms, has to be validated prior to validating the staffing form. And the reason for that is it's looking at data on the system information form, which it uses to validate the operator requirements on the staffing form. So that's the reason for that. Now, if you have any operator validation errors, those errors will show up at the bottom of the form. However, and they include a link that goes back to the operator record where the error occurred. However, there is a problem, and those links do not actually go to the location of where the error is actually occurring. It's a bug on the form, and we're having the IT department take a look at it, but we don't know when that issue will be fixed. So in the meantime, I recommend avoiding clicking on the errors themselves because they won't link back to where the actual error is happening, unfortunately. Next slide. So if anybody has any questions about the staffing and contact information form or the ASR in general, feel free to enter that into the chat or to just unmute and ask.
There was one question, I think I know the answer, Tio, that came in. When you're filling out the operator, it's the start date that the operator took that position, not the date that they obtained their license, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And then there's a question, I don't know if you can see it in chat. Tio.
Yep. Which license? So the question is, which license number do you use to search? We have operators with T and D licenses, both OIT and full at different levels. So the list that we get from DOL, it's a comprehensive list. So if that operator has multiple active licenses, any of those numbers will work. Any of those license numbers will work.
I guess just a follow up, if you're entering, say you're putting someone in the position of either a primary or secondary operator, you're going to probably want to choose the license that is appropriate for their role. So if you're say a D2 system, your primary operator has to have a D2 or higher full license. So just make sure if somebody has multiple licenses and you're putting them into a position of either primary or secondary, you're choosing the license that's appropriate for that position.
Right. So the way we populate that list, it's by individual. So if an individual holds multiple licenses, as long as they type in any of those license numbers, we're seeing the affiliation is happening at the individual level. So even if you type in a lesser grade license number, as long as you have that higher grade, it's okay, because it's the full license number. Like we kind of append each license number together to form that
So
list.
forget what I
Yeah.
said then. As long as the person that you're picking does have the appropriate license, it will work. Thank you.
Yes.
I think this is where we've scheduled a break, I believe. Am I correct, Theo? This says 10-minute break, but we have we're doing good on time, and we've slotted in a 15-minute time for break. So we'll come back at so let's say 10:05, and then we'll resume where we left off. Okay, so welcome back, everybody. Please type your first and last name into chat so that we know who we still have here in the session. That's very important. A couple of folks didn't sign in initially, so we'll have to sort that out. But do make sure you type your first and last name into chat. And if you're multiple people in a single room watching on one screen, then let us know that in chat as well. And let me see, I had a couple of notes here. Make sure you have your camera turned on. That's one way we can verify attendance. And again, encourage anybody that has any questions, you can type those into chat, and I will monitor that and read those questions to our presenters when we have a pause in the PowerPoint. And with that, I'll pass it back to the DEP folks.
Thanks, Dan. I hope everyone had a good break. We're going to move on here with the cross-connection form, which is a form that we do get frequent questions on. But feel free to type in any questions about any ASR issues you have or questions you have. We will address those at the end if we have time. So the ASR cross-connection form. The general information that you will need to prepare for this section is contact information. This should be the contact for the cross-connection program. So if there are questions related to the general cross-connection program that the DEP has, we can contact the person. The other information you will need is the surveyor and tester information, their certification numbers. If you do have a contract or a third-party cross-connection program, you will need to get their nickname. Frequently, we get these contractors contacting us and asking for the ASRs. We cannot share your ASR with them. That is something that you will have to do. And the sharing that we went over earlier is how you would share the ASR with them so they have the ability to fill out their section of the form. You will need their surveying, testing, and device information to complete the form and the activities that happened within the last year. There's also general questions on program information, education, containment policies, and any cross-connection incidents that happened within the last year. Community and non-transient, non-community public water systems get the full cross-connection section form. TNCs, transient non-communities, see an abbreviated set of questions for cross-connection. And actually the vending systems, if you are an operator for vending system, there is a single question on your form to answer. Let's see. Oops, every time I click on that. So the form starts with contact information, general contact information, name, mailing address, phone number, email, pretty standard information. Surveyor and testers. Form asks for the surveyors and testers employed or affiliated with your system. The way to add them is to start typing their certification number. And those all now start with the WS10 dash and then a number. So what I usually do when I'm testing the form out, I type in a WS10 dash, and then I highly recommend picking the number off the drop-down list. It seems to work better than trying to type out the phone number yourself. Once you've found the number that you wish to add, you click the Add Surveyor, and the same with Tester, you add Tester after picking the number off the list. Helpful tip, there is a list of certification numbers and surveyors and testers on our website. Here's the URL over here on the left-hand side. This is updated quarterly. We try to stay on top of it. If your certification is newer than the last quarter, you should be able to find it on the list, the type down list. If not, contact us and we can work it out. The third-party contractor. So question 2 will ask you if you use the third-party contractor, yes or no. This section can be filled out by the third-party contractor themselves. So you would share it with them and they would be able to fill this out. They fill out a third-party contractor information as well as their surveyors and testers they use. One problem that I've noticed that if you are trying to add a surveyor or tester up above, sometimes if the form will find an error, typically with the phone numbers. The phone numbers, like in the example here, it's missing a digit. Sometimes the form seems to be locked up. It may not move. You may not be able to see where the error is occurring. So I suggest scrolling up and down and looking all over the form for that red error message. And here you see invalid value next to that phone number. So this is commonly, people may get this error high up on they may get locked high up on the form when the error is actually down below out of view. So scroll down and review the whole form looking for an error if you get locked up. So questions 3 through 7 are related to the surveys and the devices in your system. Question 3 asks for information on facilities and the surveys performed at those facilities. This is both historical and over the past year. Question 4 asks for devices by facility type and the installation and replacement numbers. Questions 5 and 6 ask for the system-wide testing activities over the last year. So the device testing that's been done. And question 7 asks for information regarding pressure vacuum breakers and their spill-proof resistant vacuum breakers. So then the questions 8 through 14 are related to the management of your program and the operation of your cross-connection program. Violations, if there's any violations that have occurred and how you responded to them. The educational programs that you have and employ. Whether or not you have a hose bib program. Any local regulations, containment policies, etc. And then the last question relates to cross-connection incidents, whether you've had any incidents that may have caused any water quality issues. And if you need to add comments, on all the forms in the ASR, there's a comment field at the bottom. And that can be used freely, it's free form, and can be used to, give us more information than the questions or your responses allowed in the questions. And we strongly encourage you to use the comment field to clarify anything. As you can see in the form on the right, the mailing address still shows the old mailing address. This has been updated, so the new form coming out this year will have the new 100 Cambridge Street, Suite 900 mailing address for Boston for mailing in any information. So the TNCs in the system information form, question number 13 is related to the cross-connection program at the TNC. You have the ability to add a surveyor, same process. Start typing in the number WS10 and pick the number off the list, the certification ID number, and click add surveyor. If there's any devices at a TNC, you can record that using the device location, add device, and testing information for that device. And lastly, the vending systems. The vending systems also in the system information form on question 12 is the single and one place where you would answer any cross-connection questions for a vending system. And basically, did you test any backflow devices there and how frequently the tests occur? So that's a brief overview of the cross-connection section of the ASR, and some of the common problems are, adding surveyors and the form locking up because there's an error somewhere else on the form. Are there any questions that anyone has?
Again, if you think of a question later on, you can certainly type it into chat.
All right, now we are going to move to the Water Management Act, and Water Management Act utilizes information on the water volumes, the water quantity, rather than water quality. They use the individual source volumes as well as their own Water Management Act forms. I'd like to introduce Jen Durso, the Water Management Act program.
Thanks, Andrew. Do you want to stop sharing and I can scroll through, or are you happy to manage the slides?
I'm happy to manage, just it might be easier.
Okay, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm going to go over the Water Management Act forms and the components in the ASR. There's actually 7 Water Management Act tables in the ASR, but I'm actually going to review the bottom 4, only 3 of which are highlighted on here. We're going to go through residential gallons per capita day, or RGPCD, confidentially estimated municipal use, or CMU, basin withdrawal volumes, and the comparison to individual groundwater and surface water source statistics. Next slide, Andrew. So fairly soon after your submittal, I go through and I look at your RGPCD, your CMU, and your raw water production reported versus the cumulative source totals. If I have any questions, if there's any changes being proposed, if we're missing data, we put together a letter and we submit it to the public water suppliers with the opportunity to submit additional information for review. Once the deadline for that is passed, the final RGPCD and UAW numbers are posted online at the website there in the last bullet. And these are the DEP approved values, which we use to determine your compliance with the performance standards in your permit. Next slide. So what do I mean by raw water production by basin versus some of individual sources? So in table BW2, we look at the total of raw water pumped in the basin. In this example, it's the Concord Basin. And then we go to the individual sources at the end of the ASR, and we look at the totals for each source, add them up, and compare them to the total raw water pumped in table BW2. Next slide. If there's more than a 10% discrepancy, you will be getting one of those letters that I mentioned earlier. Some common causes of discrepancies: sometimes sources are identified in the wrong basin, metering issues, typos, systems that have reservoirs can be more complicated and often show up with more than a 10% discrepancy. If we don't hear back from you, for compliance purposes, the larger of the two volumes will be used. So whichever is larger, the sum of the individual sources or the total raw water pumped, that will be used for compliance purposes for the Water Management Act program. Next slide. We also look at your RGPCD. Backup documentation is required and reviewed. Please attach it electronically if you can. If there is a proposed change or question, you'll get a letter. Things we look for: population changes from year to year, large increases or decreases, changes in your source data, large swings in RGPCD, and swings that correspond to UAW variations. We also check and see if, according to your permit, you should have submitted a compliance plan, and if it has been submitted. And we do have sample documentation forms that can be found on the website in the last bullet there. Next slide. CMU. This is one of the problem areas, I think, for people with the Water Management Act forms. So I'm going to go through this in a little more detail. Backup documentation is required. If you don't submit your backup documentation, we can't accept your CMU volumes. Please try and attach them electronically. Paper forms are just hard to read and easy to lose. If there's a proposed change or missing documentation or a question, as with the other things that we review, you will be notified via a letter. Changes in UAW, we look for large increases or decreases, swings that correspond to RGPCD variations, and every year we get a few negative values. UAW can be negative, so if you get a negative value, please take another look at your forms. Like the RGPCD, we check and see if you should be submitting a compliance plan and whether or not one is attached to your ASR. And as with the RGPCD, we do have sample documentation forms that can be found on the website. Next slide. So getting a little more into the CMU categories, there are 9 categories for CMU: confidentially estimated municipal use, The ones that people tend to have the most problems with are the source meter calibration and the major main breaks. I'm going to go through what we accept for backup documentation for each. And all this information can be found in the ASR instructions. Next slide, Andrew. So once again, for CMU, if no documentation is provided, the volumes that you submit as CMU are going to be switched over to unaccounted for water. We do require documentation. And honestly, probably 80% of the letters we send out is because documentation was not provided. If you've done all the work to figure out the volumes, please just try to remember to attach the documentation. If the volume in the ASR doesn't match the backup documentation, then we will count the volume submitted as CMU as unaccounted for water. If you could avoid handwritten forms, I'd really appreciate it. It makes it hard to read. Please place the PWS name and ID on each page. If you could keep the volumes that you report in the categories that are in the ASR, that would be great. And the volume of reported, if the volume of the reported CMU is equal to or less than 3% of the distribution volume, your CMU will be automatically approved as long as there's backup documentation. And like I said earlier, the ASR instructions can be found on the website, and all this information that I'm about to go over is in the ASR instructions. Next slide. So fire protection. We accept fire protection volumes in 3 ways. You can provide us a letter from your local fire department with an estimate of flows. You can use a 1% default volume of the distribution volume, or you can estimate the volume based on the number of fires and trainings. Next slide. So if you take a look here on the left, on the top, you see the 1% example. On the left, on the bottom is an example of a letter. And on the right is an estimate that's provided by the number of incidents of trainings, of fires, with an average flow and then a total flow. The next category is hydrant main flushing and main construction. Volumes used during annual or biannual flushing can be calculated using the number of hydrants times the average volume flowed while flushing times the number of times flushed. You can use tank levels before, during, and after flushing to estimate volumes, or you can list each location separately and estimate flush volumes, although I'm not sure why you would do that. That's a lot of work. Please submit the information in a table. If you're going to list each location separately, complete with a street, project number, or other identifying information. Next slide. So here are 2 examples of that. The bottom is the kind of the summary one, 375 hydrants flushed, 1,200 gallons per minute for 15 minutes, or you can use the top example and list each one separately. Flow testing. Flow testing volumes can be calculated by using ISO or engineering flow sheets that provide hydrant locations, street addresses, and estimated flow rates. Multiply the flow rate for each test time times the flushing time, rounded to 5-minute increments. Please put it in the table in the backup documentation. And here is an example of something that we would accept. Bleeders and blow-offs. So this is an interesting one. A lot of bleeders and blow-offs are actually metered. If they are metered, you can add it to the municipal category in table DS3. It doesn't need to be in the CMU column. For bleeders that cannot be metered, we suggest you use the bucket test and extrapolate an annual volume based on the dates that the bleeder or the blow-off was operating. That table there is an example of estimating bleeders and blow-offs. tank overflow. Tank overflow, the overflow volume can be calculated using daily storage tank readings, or the flow out of the overflow piping can be calculated by using 50% of the flow rate from the pumps that are on in the system at the time. Or a lot of times people empty their tanks for cleaning, for painting. Just give me the dates and the volume of the tank, and we can count that as CMU. So here's an example of a tank draining. Next slide. Sewer stormwater flushing, document the volume of the tanker used and the number of times it was filled and emptied. Pretty simple. There's an example there. Next slide. Same with street cleaning. Please tell me the water volume in the tank times the number of times it was filled. Put it in a table. Source meter calibration. So this is one of the CMU volumes that people tend to have problems with. Calibration reports are required. So if you don't submit a calibration report, I'm going to have to send you a letter saying, please submit your calibration report. Adjustments must be prorated over time. So, for example, if you calibrate every year and it's been off by 12%, then in January, we want to see a 1% adjustment, in February, a 2% adjustment. The easier thing to do is just to take 50% of the difference between the adjusted and non-adjusted volumes. That results in the same as prorating per month. So if you haven't prorated your volumes, you will get a letter saying that your volume has been reduced by half, because we do need to prorate them. Next slide. Major main breaks. Whoops. Can you go back? Thank you. So this is the most difficult category. People have a lot of questions and concerns, and there's confusion around reporting major main breaks. The two main items to remember are that leaks found during leak detection surveys can't be counted in this category, as well as service leaks. Service leaks cannot be counted in this category. What can be counted are individual short-term, which is 1 week or less, water main breaks on major main lines. We need a location, we need a duration, a gallons per minute, and a total water loss. So if you report leak detection or service leaks, or you don't report the major main breaks in this format, we will have to reject this volume. Next slide. So the ASR instructions, the sample forms, and the DEP approved RGPCD and UAW table are all online. And my email is in the third bullet there. Please email me with any questions. I probably have spoken or emailed with most of you at some point or another.
Emily also put the Jen's email into chat, so you can just copy and paste it out of there if you'd like.
And the next slide, is that, oh, that looks like an add-on. But just to reiterate, if you have any questions on your ASR, please feel free to contact one of the 4 people listed here. And the last slide. As Tia mentioned earlier, these are the anticipated ASR release dates and due dates. So I saw there was a couple questions in there. Let me go to the chat and see what I can answer.
There was a question about table DS6.
So table DS6, the volumes entered in table DS6 don't get entered or aren't included in the calculation of your UAW. If you have concrete information, I would submit it and we can take that into consideration. But it is not required to submit backup documentation for water theft. Blake had a comment about the examples on the screen or services. Sorry, that was probably my mistake when I was copying the submittal. Let's see, any other questions?
There was a question earlier on about, is there any document, or is there a document that exists kind of as a guidance to help people prepare it? And Emily is going to put the link to the instruction guidance document that DEP has on their website. Emily just put that into the chat, so you can copy that link, and that gets you to the instruction manual that you can use that has a lot of the information that was presented this morning. And I don't know if anybody from DEP has any other suggestions on documents that people who are probably new to this might find helpful.
So as I mentioned earlier, we do have CMU documentation forms that we suggest people use. They are on the website. A lot of people just recreate them in Excel and do like a multi-tab submittal. And I guess my strongest suggestion is to, kind of every month, maybe go through and fill out your backup documentation. It's really hard to wait a whole year and then trying to gather all the information from wherever it's landed and make these estimates. So, give yourself some time, maybe at the end of every month or every week or however it works for you, just to catch yourself up on your backup documentation so you're not trying to recreate the whole thing at the end of the year.
Okay, thanks, Jen. Thanks to you and Tio and Andrew for all that information, and certainly people can have your contact information. If they have questions, they can reach out to you. Our next speaker is Andy Donnelly from Whitewater, who has been filling out ASRs for multiple systems for many years. I'm going to guess at this point, Andy, maybe over 100 ASRs, maybe even more. So I'm going to ask the folks from DEP to stop sharing your slides. That way, Andy can pull up his.
Is it working, Dan?
Not yet.
All right, 1 second.
And while Andy's doing that, Emily has put into chat his contact information. If you want to copy that, it's available in chat. Looks like it's coming up now, Andy. Okay, it's in your edit mode, not in your presenter mode.
It's not in the, all right, 1 second. I don't know why it's doing that again.
We did get it to work before we had anybody join in, so I know it does work.
Yep, just working on it now.
Again, if you want, I have it on mine. I can.
It's still coming up the edit mode.
Yeah.
How about now?
I see your cursor on the presentation mode, but it's still not in present. Nope, there it is. Now you're all set.
Oh,
We just lost it.
sorry about that.
We had it for a second.
All right. How about now?
Looks like it's coming in. There you go. It's there.
All right. So apologize for the technical abilities there. So yeah, as Dan mentioned, I am Andy Donnelly. I'm gonna kind of just speak to some ASR tips that may be helpful for your system for when it comes time to complete ASRs, which looks like it will start potentially next week. So, all right. Trying to get my screens here to. All right. So a quick agenda. We'll have a brief safety moment. Just have a quick introduction, some tips for success, and some lessons learned from my part. So prior to safety moment, so prior to all our meetings, we always start with a safety moment. Gives an opportunity for individuals to kind of highlight safety situations that they may have been involved in, identify solutions, and discuss some maybe lessons learned to prevent injuries to a fellow coworker, family member, and most importantly, yourself. So on a call recently, we had a wastewater manager speak about standard operating procedures, SOPs, and I figured I can kind of share his little his safety moment. It would be kind of applicable for this audience. So he was on site with another experienced operator, and they were about to perform a membrane cleaning. And before they kind of started the process, they just kind of thought, hey, let's go back and look at the SOP that's already in place, see if we're, see if we're missing anything. As they started to go through it, noticed that it did not cover any of the, safety procedures, PPE, and some of the technical procedures were kind of outdated. So they kind of took a step back and realized, we need to update this kind of right now in order for the next person to be kind of successful in performing this task. So it took them about 20 minutes to walk through all the steps, and then kind of incorporated all the safety things. From his point of view, he said it was an eye-opening kind of process, because we sometimes do get complacent, and we kind of default to, well, this is how it's always been. If you already have SOPs and things already in place, take a look at them. They may not be correct, maybe some of the information needs to be updated. If you're a manager in that kind of role, it's kind of our responsibility to provide our employees with correct SOPs, tools, resources, and PPE really to do their job safely. So if you're in that manager role, I definitely challenge you to kind of look through some of your SOPs in your facilities, see if they need to be updated, and address some of the safety components. And then, if you do, go through it with another experienced operator and help make some of the revisions. Might make it, and make it a little bit easier to understand and keep your people safe. So that's my kind of quick safety moment there. Just a brief overview. So I am compliance supervisor for Whitewater, oversee all water and wastewater regulatory requirements for Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island. Currently hold a VSS, T1, and a grade 3 wastewater license. If you're not familiar to who Whitewater is, we are a utility O&M company, been in service for over 40 years, primarily operating water and wastewater facilities, but we are kind of getting into a little bit the gas operations. We currently hold one account. We do provide 24/7 emergency service and support, and we do have a dedicated compliance and operational support team, our COS team, to help kind of manage and track some of the regulatory requirements. So tips for success, this is going to be about my 8th year being involved with ASRs, and I've played a hand in prepping, reviewing, and submitting over 1,000 ASRs throughout my career. And in order to kind of put yourself and your team in a good position to succeed, it all comes down to one thing, and it's you got to plan in advance. It may sound obvious to most, but if you're a facility that does, if you're managing over, like us, over multiple accounts, we have over 200 plus water systems in Massachusetts that we have to manage and get done in a timely manner. So, planning in advance is important, and as we heard earlier, when the portal opens, we really only get about 60 days. And if you take weekends out in actual business days, you're looking at about 40 to 45 days to get everything completed. And I know some may think, yeah, this is plenty of time, but in the water industry, as we all know, it can be very reactive at times when you're managing people. You got operational issues, main breaks, and other situations really outside of your control. Causes distractions, delays, in completing your ASR in time. So planning in advance will pay dividends at the end of the year and certainly save a lot of stress and headaches for yourself. Some of the things, the next few slides just kind of talk about some of the things that we've implemented over the years that might be applicable to your system and how you're currently managing it. But one of the first things that we do is, we review and compile all the data regularly. When we started, in order to prepare for our 2022 ASRs, it really started January 1st. We have a compliance team in play that each week we're compiling data that's getting captured out in the field, putting it into our tracking tools, and which allows some of the supervisors, managers to kind of review their systems at a high level at the end of the month. If you don't have a compliance team in place, or any admin, and it kind of solely resides just on your shoulders, I strongly recommend each month just kind of putting some time aside, compiling some of your ASR data each month and kind of putting it into a centralized location. It will certainly make your life a little bit easier down the road. So request information early. So what I mean by that is we sometimes don't hold all the information. It resides sometimes in the owner of the system or the town official. So we have to reach out and try to obtain that information. And, what we do is we try to give them adequate time. Everyone has their certain roles and responsibilities that they have to do. So reaching out early is going to help plan and get all your information done in a timely manner. Annual check-ins with clients and stakeholders. So we manage, again, over 200 accounts. And, if you're managing multiple systems, you'll understand that sometimes your clients have turnover. You get bought out by, property management groups, and other people leave the facility. So you got to kind of update the point of contact. So what we've done recently was kind of utilize Microsoft Forms, and we've kind of put together a quick survey link, very basic. Send it out via email. It takes less than 5 minutes for the owner of the system, and it basically captures legal responsible person, primary, secondary contacts, and emergency contacts, mainly for us to deal with situations. But like I said, it takes less than 5 minutes to do. And it's easily can be done on your phone. And we've seen a lot of success with this recently, and we're going to kind of continue with that process throughout the year. And then our quarterly information and data review kind of ties in a little bit to the reviewing and compiling data, but this was something that we put into place last year. We thought it was very beneficial for everybody. So basically, every quarter we bring in our operators, supervisors, managers, and we go through some of these topics here. So we review the water usage statistics at every one of our facilities, and because we operate so many systems, we do have that we go on site daily, weekly, monthly, and we do have some seasonal systems that are in play as well. And as the information is getting captured out in the field, if for whatever reason doesn't filter back to the compliance team, we have some checks and balances in place where we kind of put into our procedures, and we'll talk about, hey, we didn't get the water usage, meter readings for this location, and operator just may have something going on that day, forgot to send it in, goes back to the logbook, captures it, so we're all on the same page. So we have some of those checks and balances in there. Certified operator changes. Yeah, sometimes we do have some turnover. We have about 50 or more operators on our team, but we also add new accounts each year. We add new operators to our team, and we also have operators that are upgrading their licenses. So we have to, each quarter, we just kind of maintain, make sure we have the correct operators, each one of our facilities. If anything changes, we can note it then and stay ahead of it. Operational and treatment changes. This year, we kind of all stay on the same page. So if we have issues when, if a well is offline or pumps are off or treatment needs to be upgraded or offline, we can track all these notes. We have new tracking tools for individual accounts now, and we all come together each quarter. We talk about things. We can have the appropriate notes in place for when it comes to if we have to add some of these notes into the ASRs. We have those, again, checks and balances there. And then lastly, we just kind of do, upcoming compliance requirements. We kind of forecast what some of the deadlines coming down, what's happening for sampling for next month, just to kind of keep everybody on the same page and, ready to go for next quarter. So this is just an example of a dashboard that we use on our end. So kind of does a high level overview of the overall water production. And if you needed to get a little bit more granular, you can kind of dive in by clicking on one of the account names. Then it gets, you can kind of get into the specifics. If there's multiple wells, it's going to give you the multiple well water usage. If, meter's been changed out or notes that need to be documented, they're all there, and we update this every quarter. And then this tool here is for managers, supervisors to kind of capture that overall water usage. One of the things that, we're going to be kind of working on this year is with drought concerns kind of on the rise the last couple of years, is putting some new triggers in play that will capture when we exceed the withdrawal limit at these wells. We'll be able to highlight those and kind of starting to put together some corrective action plans associated to that if it's going to continue to reoccur. So I reached out to one of our managers who kind of oversees one of the bigger municipal projects that we operate, and kind of got his perspective of ASRs for over the years. And it came down to a couple things for him. And it was, the unaccounted for water. So putting in checks and balances there, where he kind of built some relationships with some of the other municipal departments. So he checks in kind of regularly, obtains some of the water usage, fire protection, the street sweeping, etc. He kind of reaches out, gathers his numbers, plugs them into his tracking tools that he has, and he can kind of compare the unaccounted water each quarter versus the overall production. And another thing that's made his life easier is certainly having a work order management system. Having utility cloud in the mix has made life easier, capturing hydrant flushing, blow offs, and things like that. As data comes in, he checks on it again quarterly, puts it into the spreadsheet so he can kind of account for it throughout the year. But that has certainly made his life easier, making sure everything is up to date, and not waiting until the portal opens to kind of start this process. And the other thing was, that made his life easier is the cross connections, backflow information. So after each testing round, having a compliance team, having somebody in play to help gather the data, put it into a centralized location, and maintain the adequate notes that needs to be included into the ASRs. And again, the work order management system, utility cloud, has certainly made his life a little bit easier in that aspect as well. So if anyone has a work order management or you using utility cloud and not capturing some of this data, you can certainly reach out and to utility cloud or any one of us to help with that. So some of the things that we do in-house is we have a training every year, typically in January, trying to plan just before the ASR portal goes live. And we bring every team member in, operators, supervisors, managers, and we go over all the ASR's requirements, similar to some of the things that we saw in the beginning presentation. We kind of hit some of the high levels so everybody understands what the process is. And then we kind of go over the roles and expectations of who is going to do what throughout the process. And then we have, again, having so many systems, we have an opportunity every time the portal does go live. We we will do a live training. So I will do a training with various team members, and we'll do one step by step, so everyone kind of sees it. And whether you've done it a few times or not, everybody goes through the steps to kind of keep it refreshed, so we all know what we need to do. And again, if you're just doing this for your one system, it could be an opportunity for cross training. So if you have other team members on your staff that are looking to kind of climb the ladder and make a career jump, get them involved, show them the ASR, so cross training. It'll help benefit everybody kind of down the road. And again, when we start the process, we always have a copy of last year's ASR in our hand, so we can kind of see some of the data that was put in last year, and make sure we're capturing everything correctly and then putting it into the certain sections. And then we have a weekly progress report. So if you're, again, managing multiple systems like we are, having a tool in place to make sure where we're at in the progress. I have a quick dashboard of what what we utilize for our weekly report. So we have a dashboard that captures our service areas: Western, Central, Northern, Central, and we have some of our DCR projects, but goes by classifications, tells you how many systems are in each category, and as steps and people that are involved doing certain pages of the ASRs, they're going in, logging their information and that they've completed it. So we have checks and balances, and we can kind of see throughout the week where we're at. And I provide this kind of dashboard high level up to our management team, so everybody is in the loop and ensuring we're getting everything done in a timely manner. Again, maybe a tracking tool like this might be beneficial to some of you guys. So if it does, feel free to reach out and we can provide any a template or anything. So small little thing here. So because we do so many ASRs, one of the things that has been helpful for some of the managers, supervisors that get in there and do some final review and approval of the ASRs is having a note section. So in the private note, just adding, what the name of the system is. So DCR, State Forest 2021 ASR, adding a note in there has been beneficial because it's easier for certain people to get in. And when you log into your page, we may have 10 plus pages of ASRs that you have to filter through as you're trying to do some final reviews and updating the information. And this was a tip from a couple of years ago that somebody was said, hey, can we start putting the name? Makes it easier for everybody to kind of find their information a little bit quicker. So it may be useful, maybe not. And then just kind of some lessons learned over the years from my end. So we have some seasonal systems, and before we've had a really structured compliance team. Some of the information out in the field, seasonal may have filtered its way, may not have. And, we kind of just said, oh, when the portal open, we'll just go to that facility and we'll gather the information. Years ago, we found ourselves in a sticky situation where facility was closed and we thought we could access it. We, figured, we know they're closed. We just need to get to the logbook. So we tried to call up the owner, and, during the winter months, the owner lives out of state. So we, lessons learned on that part, we need to do a better job planning, capturing the data, and making sure it comes into the office in a timely manner, so we don't put ourselves in that type of situation. Certainly COVID is still out there, and it impacts, maybe your team, everyone, clients, you name it. The last couple of years, it has been a struggle. We try to prep and get information out to our clients so we can get information flowing back in, and people are out. We have operators that are out, our compliance team. So if you can, and it's just one person doing ASRs, certainly get some cross training in place to help with some of those impacts that may have related to COVID, because it's still out there. And again, I'm sure there'll be some of our clients that are going to be impacted, and there's going to be some delays in trying to get information. Tracking tools. Prior to that fancy looking dashboard that we just provided. We didn't have something like that in play. We didn't have a structured, compliance team when I first started. So early on, yeah, we missed one facility. We didn't complete it. Somehow we overlooked it. And we realized we need to put something in place so we can ensure this doesn't happen again. Worked on these dashboards, captured all the steps, captured all the clients, and ensuring we're getting it done in a timely manner. So tracking tools certainly helped and benefit us in the past, and we're still improving on some of the processes. Training. We've certainly had new staff over the years, and new supervisors, new operators, managers. And before, we didn't do these in-house trainings, and we would just, they would start. Some people came on just as the ASRs were coming on board and kind of got thrown in the mix, and trying to find out where the information is, trying to plug it in. We had some errors. When we went through the review process, some of the information didn't get put in there accurately, and it all came down to we didn't provide the individual with the right resources, the right training to do their job successfully. So every year now we have refresher courses in-house and to provide for our team, so we can put in the information and everything kind of moves step by step smoothly. Review data. So a couple quick lessons learned on my part early on in my career. I was overseeing one of the accounts, and as we were kind of capturing the water usage for the year, the well 1, well 2 meters were very similar. And in reads in the meter read and whatnot, and the water usage, and somewhere down the line, I inadvertently switched well 1, well 2. Now the water usage was accurate, but I was reporting the wrong, well 1 was for well 2 and vice versa. So we didn't fix that issue until a year or 2 years later, where we had to do a meter change out, and then we realized then it was like, oh, we've been reporting the wrong usage, so we had to go back a few years, revise the water usage so it could be appropriately updated in the ASR. So, and the other thing, another quick story was, the unaccounted for water. Early on in my career, kind of got put into that role of trying to understand and where the information comes in. And I'm working with one of our projects, one of our municipal towns, and that individual was new to his role as well. And we didn't, when it came to the unaccounted for water, we were overestimating our usage, and we were getting a negative number. And it took some time to kind of figure out. We lost track of it. During when the portal went live, we should have started capturing this data or looking at it prior, but we didn't do it until kind of 30 days in. We were like, oh, we'll set aside some time, we'll take care of it, and we didn't get it resolved before the due date, so we had to submit it. We had a note that we were going to look into it, and we finally figured out what the issue was and where we plugged in some of the numbers wrong. But not doing it, doing it for the first time and doing it with somebody else that wasn't familiar with some of the numbers and how he got it, it was a struggle. So certainly review your data before it gets sent in. It'll certainly help and cause some headaches down the road. And then really just in closing, some of these tips may be beneficial to your system. It may not, but by no means are we perfect. We've certainly made mistakes over the years, but we try to put some, implement new processes to kind of, overcome some of these mistakes and make sure they don't happen each year, and certainly to help better serve our clients. So, one thing any of the advice and things that you can kind of take away is, if you're doing all the right things throughout the year, reviewing all your data on a regular basis, then you're really going to put yourself in a great position to kind of succeed in getting this done in a timely manner. So it's kind of it on my end. Certainly if anybody has questions, how to get through ASR's MassDEP, there's a lot of great resources there. if anyone has questions for myself, they can certainly, my email's here, office number, give me a call and we can, bounce off some ideas and whatnot, so.
Thank you, Andrew. Feel free to type any questions into chat. The next thing I'm gonna do is, and you can stop your screen share. We're gonna move on to doing the assessment questions. So let me just get the next slide up. So Emily is going to put into chat the link that you can click on, and it will get you to the assessment questions. Fill those out. Alternatively, you could use the camera on your smartphone and point it at this QR code, and it should take you to the link to do the assessment questions. And I'll give everybody a few minutes to do those, and then we'll go through each of those questions as a group. That may generate some questions or comments, and then we'll move on to the final piece before we wrap up for the day. If you run into any problems doing the assessment questions, please let me know. You can type that into chat, or you can send me a text message, just so I know why we didn't get your answers for that. So the first assessment question you should have seen is, for new users of EDEP, a proof of identity must be approved and requires which of the following? And the correct answer there is B. Printing out the proof of identity form, having it notarized, and sending it to MassDEP. And Andrew mentioned that once you get that notarized, you can do a scan of that and send it in electronically, and they can process it quicker, but they also verify that document when they get the hard copy in the mail. Next question, true or false, cross connection and backflow data only needs to be entered into the ASR if there are any changes from the previous year, and that is false. I think Tio mentioned that when you go to the ASR section, the cross connection section of the ASR, that's the one, that section, it's not pre-populated, so it's just a bunch of blank fields, and you will need to fill out that information each year. Number 3, which of the following items can a water system include to estimate the confidently estimated municipal use, or the SEMA that Jen Durso covered? And all of those categories are used as part of the SEMA. So all of the above would be the correct answer on number 3. Anybody have any questions on any of those? Any of our presenters want to add anything related to any of those? And then the last 2 questions, accurate licensed water operator data must be included on the ASR. It can only be updated on the ASR if the operator data is up to date with which state agency. And as Tio mentioned, that is the Massachusetts Division of Occupational Licensure. And then the last question, which of the following is not required to be added or updated on the ASR. And at least up to this point, we don't need to include our lead and copper 90th percentiles. All of the other items are things that need to be added or updated in the ASR. Okay, and then the last thing I'll also mention, Emily will put the link to do the evaluation in chat, so you can click on that and do it very similar to the assessment questions. That's your opportunity to let us know how you think the training went. Also can let us know if you have any training suggestions that we can include in this coming year. We'll try to get those organized. You can use the camera on your smartphone to get to the evaluation. I will mention that if you did not get the copy of the handouts for all of the slides that were shown, let me know and I can send those to whoever requested as a PDF attachment to an email. And also the session is being recorded, so I will have that recording available. If that's something you're interested in getting, send me an email and I will get that to you. I believe that DEP will take the recording and probably post it on their website, probably in their video of their library of video trainings, but I'm not exactly sure how that's going to happen and when that'll become available. But certainly if you want the recording, let me know. It's not going to be a polished recording, so it will have, you know, empty space where we were on break and things like that, but it'll be a recording of everything that was presented this morning. And then finally, the last thing that you'll need to do before you log out in order to be eligible for the training contact hours is to make sure that once you're done with the evaluation, you sign out in chat. So type your first and last name into chat, and then you're all set to lead the session. I want to thank again everybody for joining in on the training. I know this is the time is good for this. People are getting ready to start doing their ASR. I want to thank all of the presenters for doing such a great job in giving a really good overview of how it works, and also some important tips and troubleshooting some common things that people run into. And if anybody has any questions, I'm going to stay on the Zoom session a little bit longer. I don't know if our presenters will stay on as well, but certainly feel free to unmute yourself or type it into chat. Again, thank you all. And once you do the evaluation, you can log out of the Zoom class. If anybody's having trouble doing the evaluation, just send me a message and I can send that. I can email that to you.
Hey, Dan, you there?
Yes, I am.
Hey, completely not relevant to this seminar, but some of my guys expressed interest in a cross connection, the update course. Is there anything scheduled for that?
I just met with my education committee last Friday, and we're talking about doing something on cross connection. I don't know whether that's just kind of a 101 for new people who just need to know what it is and what kinds of devices and some of the things they run into, or if people out there are looking for a specific training on, we don't have a facility to do device testing, but, let me know, Kevin. You can email me if there's a specific topic you're interested in. We see if we can
Yeah,
get
I
something
think he
going.
was just looking for the update, the.
Yeah, DEP doesn't do those anymore. Years ago, DEP
Right.
regional office would do a cross-connection update of the program. They haven't done that.
Right.
Probably 8 or 10 years.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye out then. Thank you.
Okay,